Hello, beautiful people. We have our lovely Abby Dagnice here, beautiful medium, and she's going to channel Erik, my son, but also probably call Jung because we need that on this particular topic, mommy and daddy issues. And Abby and I could really share a lot of daddy and mommy issue stories. So, anyway, thank you. I love you, Abby. I love you, my dear Erik.
Eric's saying, why thank you, everyone. Why thank you, Mama. And he's actually thanking us all for participating, not just you and me, Elisa, but anybody watching this, because he says that a lot of people are just consistently plagued with mommy and daddy issues, not just from their childhood. He's saying, but also karmatic equations of it coming down generations and affecting.
Oh,
He's also saying mommy and daddy issues, as in things you're going through yourself with your partner, ex-partner. He says this is such a wide range of topic.
yeah, I'm going to read the initial. By the way, we will have Abby's information on us on the screen here at some point. Maybe it already is there. I don't know, but Paula will take care of it. So anyway, I'm going to read Asya, a Atlanta Scalar client, her email broaching the possibility of covering this topic. Hi, Elisa. I just thought I'd write you a quick email to suggest a potential topic that Erik could possibly discuss in the future. It's mommy and daddy issues in both men and women. I'm not sure if it's been discussed in the past. It has not. I believe it's also linked to enmeshment trauma. I'm not sure what that is, but I'm going to look it up. These issues can take many forms, but some of the symptoms include a strained maternal relationship in childhood that has an effect on all adult relationships, emotional neglect, poor sense of self-worth, poor boundaries, insecurity, being attached to older people, wanting them to be your mom, dad, being a people pleaser, etc. And I think that can also be a good scalar service in the future. Not sure how to do that. I know we do clear out old karma, as we were talking about, and cut ancestral DNA and trapped emotions and such. But she does have some questions now.
Do you
Uh,
mind if I interrupt you?
yeah, go ahead, and then we can get to the questions after
Black
Erik does his
Eric,
monologue.
Eric wants to interrupt you. Okay.
Okay.
As much as this is he says it would be such an eloquent service if that's something that we could produce. He says, and as much as you think it would be helpful, he says he wants to remind you of the human experience,
Yeah.
of the fact that there are soul contracts that when you come into this life, you do choose who your parents are going to be. And likewise, your children choose who you are going to be. And that doesn't have to be a birthed parental. He says it's a contract of understatement and understatement of how much importance goes into that choosing. He says, and he doesn't want people
Yeah.
to negate that need of the soul to be able to choose. He says we don't get to decide. We keep putting
Yeah.
these human aspects in this, like we have a choice. Why would I choose to have, he says, this eccentric life of agony and pain, or you could have the opposite, the most beautiful life of everything to give. He says, that's a very humanistic, like you're putting something on it there that you're not meant to
Right.
understand.
Right. And scalar work is not meant to disinfect all the challenge and struggle and loss and trauma from your life. It's often there for a reason. But once
Exactly.
those lessons are learned from that, then those are contracts that can be revoked, but only if the lesson is complete, basically. All right, go ahead, Erik.
And you're meant to sometimes relive those lessons,
Yeah,
because
no pain, no gain.
yeah, sometimes these lives are so difficult and so underestimated and misunderstood that you don't catch it the first time or even the second time or even the third time.
Yeah.
He says some problems just can't be worked out here on earth. They need to be worked out in heaven, because here it's just not
Hmm.
in our human minds to be able to wrap the concept of certain conversations with family members, mother, daughter, father, son, siblings, friends, it doesn't matter. He says, with parentals, he says, you do choose just as much as they choose you. So there's certain obligations that are fulfilled with each other. And one of them is highly misunderstood, he says, which is the need to sacrifice. He says sacrificing your self-worth, sacrificing your misunderstood boundaries.
Yeah.
And with those, sometimes you feel like you can't have boundaries with your parents, but that's all part of the lesson. He says people is understanding what your boundaries are. Sometimes that's a soul contract life lesson that you're supposed to go through and experience. He says obvious trauma, obvious PTSD, obvious really relatable causes for a lot of people. So many of you, he says, so many of you have been brave enough to take on this lifetime with parentals or being a parent and having trauma responses that as adults you're still playing out. He says he keeps using the word negate, don't negate them, as that's something that is not okay to feel through and work through.
No, I mean, for example, the abuse that I had, that was really important for my spiritual development. And I wouldn't have traded it for the world. Of course, still every once in a while I have dreams of like ripping my father used to beat us with the other end of the leather belt, the buckle end, and really hard that he was sweating. And sometimes I just dream that I grab it from him and say, you lay another belt on me or a hand on me or a cowboy boot kick on me, and I'm turning you in to the CPS, and you're going to go to prison for the rest of your life. So I do just express that boundary every once in a while, but
he says that's a really great way of replaying these scenarios that a lot of like therapists use, hypnosis uses to really cross dimensions. So that way you can replay out that scenario and put it in your own control as a form of therapy to be able to evolve from it. So that's a really healthy coping mechanism for some of the most deepest inner, childhood traumas that you could not control at the time, but now you as strong as you are and as brave as you are, it's still, and as hard as it is, you can put yourself into regression. You can put yourself into hypnosis. You can put yourself into therapy, and you can replay out these roles as if you would want them to be. Again, we're talking about time is not linear, as we've always heard.
Right.
Thousands of Erik videos now.
I know.
The multidimensional lives are all happening at the same time. So if you can get yourself, you can time jump it. You can time jump it, and you can decide, I didn't like this factor. I didn't like how this played out. And some of these are so suppressed memories. He says he wants you to keep in mind, Mom. He says some of these memories for a lot of people are so suppressed because they're so severe that they just don't even know that they're there. And this is where Dr. Carl, I can never say the last name right, Jung,
I think it is. Jung or Young. It's a Young.
And he's saying the child, is not meant to, they're not born into immediately being able to emotionally cope. It is a learning strategy and a learning mechanism that they develop along the way of their teachings from their parental types and figures. You must grieve the way that you had to cope as well. So it's not just about the coping and the getting through it and the repressed memories. It's the fact that this innocence of the child had to do this, had to repress these things, and how difficult, like he's saying, really to step outside yourself. Think of it as bravery, he says, as in you're still in the physical there, and then you step outside of yourself and you're experiencing it, and you may not have a choice as a child, he says, but then you have the choice as an adult. You have the choice as an adult to regress back to that therapy. And there's a lot of therapeutic mechanisms nowadays that he encourages that bring enlightenment. What the fear is that people don't want to cope and deal with the enlightenment of what it brings because of the pain of the tragedy and having to deal with the grief. He says, it's not normal to want to deal with the fear again. It's not normal to want to cope with these coping mechanisms again, but you're doing it every single day. You're doing it.
You have to find the bravery to grieve over the loss of innocence, over the loss of childhood.
Correct. He says, correct.
Yeah.
He says, but the only true way to move the process, to move the karma, to move the equation, to move the lesson, is to redevelop your new strategies of coping, which is, he says, dealing with it. He says, dealing with it is the way. He says that's your yellow brick road.
Okay.
Yeah. And so there are memories and there are anger. He says, and there are emotional well-being types that suppress these, and they come out in different ways, in different strategies. You have the woman, he says, who's the briefcase and all, storming into the office, CEO, corporate America, on top of everything. And that could be her coping mechanism of dealing with her strategies of childhood trauma. And then you have, on the other end of the line, he says, you have the drug addict user to want to have escapism.
Yeah.
However, it's not escapism. Both are forms of escapism. It's a matter of what you're allowing yourself to be entitled to define yourself as. That is the choice that you get. That is the choice that you have. And that is the factor that allows the change within you, is your choice to be whoever you want to be.
Right.
You can go through, and you must go through what you must on a contractual basis to evolve, not just you, people around you, to evolve humanity, to evolve. These are lessons that it's not just all about you. Erik says, not just all about you people. He says, but also the players in the factor. He's saying, but it's to evolve humanity. It's to evolve the essence of yourself into the next state of age, the next factor and level of dimensional being.
Wow,
and some
pretty deep.
Factors cannot be worked out in this life. Sometimes these factors need to be worked out after life. However, the choice is, and the lesson in this is that you get to decide, because of freedom and free will, whoever you want to be.
Yeah.
Whoever you decide you want to play, because you're all just actors acting in a big giant play. And that is your choice. That is your choice.
A lot of people are afraid of their own emotions too. And especially if they had abusive parents, they're afraid to express anger or fear or sadness, etc. So what do you do there? Any advice?
This is really ironic you're bringing this up to me, because I noticed for myself, I got super mad. Abby doesn't get mad. I get cryy, and I get very blamey on myself, and I messed up. I'm so terrible. Nope. Yeah. This was such a huge, and this was after I did a latest scalar. I got I was vibrating. I was so
I did scalar work on her.
Yeah.
And big stuff happened.
Huge stuff. And for the first time, instead of the self-talk being self-sabotage, this is actually Erik talking right now. He's saying what she used was instrumental. She used her grief strategy to move it into anger. And Dr. Carl Jung is walking back. He's being back now. And he's saying, but that is the movement. Sometimes you need to get angry. Sometimes you need to, you always need to feel. This is part of the unblockage of what Atlantis Scalar did. He's saying my name with this eye. It's like Abby, this accent, and he's saying, but this was part of unblocking the blockage, was allowing her he's calling me Exhibit A.
Oh, exhibit
He's
A for Abby.
Exhibit A, Robbie. He's saying, but it is an exhibit of how these symptoms with using, it was Tesla, right? That used Atlanta scalar that did.
Yeah.
Okay. So he's saying using Tesla's energy source to be able to recreate a dynamic that you had been missing throughout your childhood that had been instilled into you. He's saying by Exhibit A of
Abby.
parentals, right? I was not allowed to express anger. What I was allowed to express, he's saying, Exhibit A. I'm glad he's making me laugh because this is tough.
Oh.
He's saying what she really needed to exhibit was sadness, and then it would lay off. It was like make her cry really hard and hate herself for whatever reason. And when she cries hard enough, then the layoff. So what that exhibited, he says, with Abby, he says, is it provoked an innate nature throughout her life that's her coping mechanism to dealing with immense amount of stress that she cannot provide and produce the self-talk and the coping mechanisms that Abby I'm sorry,
love that.
needs to be able to move a situation.
Yeah.
It's about the freedom to move a situation. He's saying life is going to happen. It's going to happen to you and it's going to happen at you.
And you have to have movement to go forward. You have to move through emotions, move through processing emotions, all that. Yeah.
And he's saying you are taught through your culture. Our culture is in Americans, okay? That anger, all right, is bad. That anger is not a civil matter to deal with your stress. And he's not sitting here saying like go out and harm people.
No.
It's more allow yourself to feel those feelings. Once you start allowing yourself to feel the anger, and the self-talk no longer is I'm unworthy, I'm undeveloped, it's my fault, I'm so sad, and it changes to I have value, I am worth it, I am worthy, I believe in myself, I don't deserve this, and I know I don't, and fuck you. You know what I mean? Those things are very valid, and he says very valuable and important, and that is your growth. That is who you need to be to grow into. And it's that was scary.
Yeah.
So if anyone's like ever been through getting really mad like that for the first, I know this sounds funny because I'm 41, but like to get really angry like that for the first time ever, I mean, it was very strange feeling homicidal. Just kidding.
Yeah. Oh my God.
It wasn't feeling homicidal. I mean, kind of a little, but it was a new emotion that I had not allowed myself to ever, I didn't even know I could feel.
Yeah.
And then it was like, I was just shaking after, because then it was like, I didn't even know I could feel that. But then the weight off the shoulders, I can't express the weight of
and was this all after, was this before or was it
after Atlanta scalar?
Oh, okay. Okay. Got it.
Was 3 weeks, maybe almost 4, maybe about a month, 3 to 4 weeks after Atlanta scalar.
Yeah.
And it was about 3 weeks. Yeah. And it was really unimaginable how it all went down, that I acted in a way that I've never acted. I behaved in a way I had never behaved. And the universe had a way of making it happen. So I saw what I needed to see. I felt what I needed to felt. I heard what I needed to hear. And then it brought out this very animalistic, that sounds strange, but
very animals
in me. But what I didn't know was how badly my entire life I had been conditioned to not being allowed to feel that kind of anger.
Yeah. Wow.
I was afraid of my parentals. So instead I would just cry. And Dr. Jung is coming back in and he's saying, Exhibit A experiences, Exhibit A understands, Exhibit A has freedom. And it does, it brings a new sense of freedom when you allowing yourself to, it is a way of grief. It's a way of process. And then the intensity of allowing yourself to let that go. He says, also freedom of choice. You can decide that it was just a moment and it's nothing. He says, you can always choose that. However, he says, with such intensity for Abby, he says it could not be held onto. It was a way of release. And that is the point, is that you need to get to yourself. It just doesn't matter, Eric's saying, like, how you were raised. And the thing, he's saying this in the most sensitive way. Okay. He really is. It's not, so many people have gone through such tragic, horrific things in their childhood that I mean, after all the channelings I've done, it's like really, so many people can relate. It's just that you do have choice to be whoever you want to be.
Absolutely.
And if you want it to be different, it will be. If you want it to shift, it can. You don't need to just have a service to change that. And Dr. Jung is saying your service is to yourself, to figure out your own techniques and your own availabilities and options to you. So if it's a financial matter, if it's a matter of coming to the conclusion that you're just not prepared, he says, if it's a matter of disillusionment, like you don't even realize how traumatized you've been, he's saying all of this is part of your humanistic life lesson, and it will play out, and you will go over it in heaven, and you will sit at the table with the blueprint. Okay. And nobody's sitting there shaking their finger at you going, oh, you missed that lesson. It's more like, okay, I could have played it this way. I could have played it that way. Wow. That could have gone a lot different. Like, I didn't think of that. Or, oh shoot, I missed the boat on that one, but that's okay, because now I know, he's saying, again, it's about freedom of choice. And those choices, he says, if you think that you come here to earth to have easy choices, you're wrong.
Yeah.
You're wrong.
Well, the freedom of choice implies to me forward motion, forward movement, whereas those of us who have had difficult parentals, we very often end up with self-loathing, negative self-talk, and that seems to be like you're just running in place. So that is an identity or a situation where you are stuck. When you self-loathe, it seems like there's no forward movement. Am I wrong?
You're absolutely correct, doctor. He says.
Oh. All right. So, well, the way I processed what I went through, Dr. Jung, was to see the value in it, to see what it. Of course, I wasn't wallowing as an adolescent. Oh, poor me! What a terrible life. But then I grew up and I decided to look and see what the value was, and it was that I became more nurturing. It made me a better mother, made me find my voice, etc. So, what do you say when you psychoanalyze Elisa's way of doing it? Any advice? Because I'm sure there's a lot of people who have been through the same path.
Part of it is coming to the conclusion that you even want to face it. He says that is the biggest challenge for most. Yeah. Is facing the fear, and you still have, again, that like animalistic, like inside of you, like just, that they can't do these things to you anymore on a negative scale. But what that brings up for you, those are your triggers. Those are your triggers. He's saying, and who wants to, especially with life, he says, in your world, look, all of the densities and all of the heaviness and all of the things on a natural day-to-day, and now you're going to pull things from you that you may or may not remember, that persist inside of you, and deal with that. He says that's not just courage, that's an act of extreme bravery. He says, but I promise you this. He says, I promise you this, it will move you and change you. And he's giving an example right now of one of his patients who she's very angry at him. She stormed out of there, slamming that door. I am not doing that. I am not dealing with that. I am not doing what you tell me. And the secretary, she was like, should I call her? And he said, no, nope, don't call her. She will call me back. She will decide that she is going to interpret my theory. She will decide to go with my suggestions, and she will call me. It took a year for her to, and when
Wow.
she called back crying, and she called back on another level of relief and in tears, letting him know that she's ready for another session. And she's worked through what he had her working through. And her anger was not at him. It was at the situation. He says this is where intensity can range. It can be dangerous. It can be on a dangerous scale because the thoughts that it can provoke out of you can be very extreme. It can make you feel suicidal. Why do you think a lot of people, he says, have suicidal ideation? Because it's their form of escapism, is to think, if I'm no longer here. He says, and that is, in fact, he says, an early childhood recognition of, I can't do anything about this. Get me the help out. He says, facing that fear, facing those emotions, begging yourself not just to go, but to stay, he says, is a very difficult factor to work through.
That's profound. Do you help people on the other side? Like you said, we go to the other side, lay out the blueprints, etc. But Dr. Jung, are you part of the guidance counselor on the other side?
He says, why, yes, absolutely, I am.
I have a feeling.
Actually writing another book right now. So he's working about writing another.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and continue reading Asya's response when I asked her for questions. All right, mommy issues. For men, it can often be associated with the term mama's boy, which is basically saying that someone is too close to their mother. This can happen when moms are super servile and instill in men a sense that this is how women should behave. It can lead to men having expectations of such behavior in romantic relationships and even seeking out female partners who check this box. It can also lead to them mentally pitting their romantic partner's attributes against their mother's. So and then we'll get to the female aspect of this. But, well, let me go ahead and read this. This term manifests completely differently for women. If a female child has mommy issues, it's more typically referencing that a mother's nitpicked or verbally put down their daughter. That's so true. This can lead to self-confidence and self-image issues later in life. It can also lead to trust issues since the person that you trusted for your primary care let you down in this way. So, do you have anything to say about what I just read from Asya?
So there's all sorts of ways, he says, and symptoms that this can come out as. One of those ways is self-sabotaging because of the need to have maternal, but it's almost like you're angry about not having that maternalism from the mother. So you do things to self-sabotage yourself in maternalistic ways. And one of them is receiving the love factor. So receiving love from a partner, staying more in your masculine than in your feminine because you're on the defense with anger. So this is where there's different issues that can come into play. One of them is absolutely defeminization. One of them is negating as a whole women and what they're capable of. One of them is, in your mind, living in the 1800s, is women have their role, and like it can come out, especially for men, in a way that can be very demoralizing with women. So they may not treat women so well. Whereas women would, with maternal issues, would come out Well, very, very, they can come out two ways. They can come out very like that on top of things CEO type. I have everything under control. I am perfect well-being, but really they're a fucking mess, Erik says,
Oh,
inside. And they do try to be unlovable. And there can also
oh
be,
wow. Wait, so
yeah,
why do they try to be unlovable? Tell me, explain a little bit more.
the mother is a symbol of the most nurturing, lightest love. Think of Mother Mary, right? With religion. So the
Or
mother,
Mama Elisa.
Mama Lisa, like they are, if you don't have that maternalization from your mother
Yeah.
as a woman, it can draw a lot of feelings of self-apprehension towards feeling worthy of love, feeling worthy of self-love. But it's almost like this ego thing too, where your self-talk goes, it goes extreme. It
Yeah.
goes extreme because it's like, nope, I am, you know, egocentric, I guess.
All right,
You know,
so basically they grow up trying to make themselves unlovable, or on the other extreme, can they?
kind of themselves on level. It's not on a conscious level.
Yeah, no, no.
This self-sabotaging level.
Oh,
It can go on an overthinking scale. It can go on a suicidal scale. It can go on a what am I missing that's part of me scale. Okay.
oh, yeah.
So there's a lot of scales and a lot of factors. You can't just sit here and put like it
No,
in
but
categories because
basically it's about what's wrong with me.
having the
I'm
missed
not enough. Yeah,
having the missed maternalization comes out on so many levels, and some of it's not your fault. Like if your mother passes when you're young,
oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
or if you have, I mean, especially nowadays, it's like you have two dads, you know,
Right.
it's it is what it is. It doesn't mean that like now you're not going to get the love you need maternally.
Yeah.
He says maternally doesn't have to be female. He
No,
says
of course not.
maternalism comes with factors of proving and showing love,
Yeah,
proving and showing,
nurturing, totally
yeah,
nurturing.
nurturing. But this is also Dr. Jung is bringing in nurture versus nature,
Mm.
that concept as well. So it's too big of a topic in this YouTube, but and it's very
Oh yeah, of course.
spectrum of people and how they deal with these different interactions of not having a maternal. But he says, in theory, in logic, he says there can be much more of an avoidant personality type that can
Yeah.
come out, along with a detachment personality that can come
Oh
out
wow.
with not having the maternal. We're having not having the father role, right? If he is demeaning, if he is a jerk, pretty much,
Yeah.
he doesn't do things. It can turn into a very attached style of like, but also the maternal can too. This is
Yeah.
a lot. I know, I get it. It's a lot. But just in basic theory, okay, because this is like books of theory here we're going
Yeah.
through. But in basic theory for men, they deal with being much more with having a father that is detached. Self-confidence.
Oh yeah.
Confidence is a huge one. Anger issues is a huge one. Self-replicating what they think, like, well, that was my dad, so that must be me. you
Oh
know,
yeah.
having that disillusionment of like, this is who I must be now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he wants you all to remember, Erik, that the point of this entire topic is the fact that you can be whoever you want to be.
Yeah.
It's really a matter of allowing yourself the process of what Dr. Jung is talking about here, of disengaging from the disillusionment of who you were meant to be, how you want to be, and how you want to proceed with your life. That is all a choice. People don't get to decide that for you. You decide
Absolutely
for you.
not.
You decide that for you. And that is where the misinterpretation comes in with this all.
Yeah.
It's like, how many times have you had a friend or known somebody that Eric's talking? He's saying that they go on and on and on and on and on about my mom did this to me, my dad did this to me, and I'm so messed up, and da 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 da. And it's like, how much more can they take? And what that evolves into disease. It can turn into multiple diseases. It can turn into multiple anti-inflammatory issues in your body. It can turn into self-sabotage. It can turn into self-sacrifice. It turns into negative behaviors. It turns into addiction issues. He's saying it's the
What about promiscuity? I mean, you didn't feel like you got
100%.
love. So
100%.
man, I'm putting myself out there. Men and women, I guess.
Yes. It can turn into sex
Looking for
addiction.
love in all the wrong places.
It can turn into sex addiction issues,
Yeah.
especially with maternal. If you're missing something from the maternal side, for a man, it can turn very much into a sex addiction issue where you are now demoralizing what that act is. And it can become a very promiscuous way of coping with that desire of somebody like need. It's like it's an addiction. It's a trigger point in your mind of like, I have it, but then that becomes an issue with self-love, because it's like the polar opposite, because it's like now you're having a hard time making love to the person that you love.
Yeah.
Because you're using that as a coping mechanism to deal with your stress and your anger, and you're only using it in very depleting ways. You're not using it as a source of showing love and showing affection, because that's a coping mechanism you used.
Yeah. So what about the situation where women end up finding partners like kind of like their dad, even though it's the kind of a toxic deal, and same with men finding partners that are like their moms.
God damn, if I had that figured out. If I don't laugh, I'll cry.
Oh God.
No, really though, it's true. Like, you're so right, because it's so easy. Like, it's this comfort zone. It's this comfort blanket, and Eric's absolutely like bringing this up, and I'm agreeing with him. It's like you get used to this certain behavior pattern, and it is weird as a young woman. I'm like, Erik, you were never a young woman. He's like, I'm talking about you idiot.
Abby.
That's Abby. That's our interaction, Erik and I engaging. He says things like that to me, but he's not calling me an idiot.
This is playful.
We pick at each other.
Terms of endearment.
Exactly.
Right.
We're friends.
Yeah, of course.
It's just that you get used to certain patterns of behavior, and then he says it's very difficult to then just all of a sudden march right out of that pattern of behavior and different. So of course you're not going to recognize those red flags.
Yeah.
My friends always joke around. They're like, your red flags, Abby, are glittery red glitter. Like, pretty. I'm coming to it.
Oh, that's so cute. Like a moth to the flame.
Oh, pretty glitter red flags. Erik's waving right now at me.
Oh,